Today, we are diving into a really unusual text. It reads less like a story and more like a scripture from some world after the end of ours. It's called The Gospel of the Tarantula Preacher, and it's this kind of parable, but not for salvation. It's for a new, unsettling, but weirdly coherent philosophy, and it grabs you from the very first sentence. So let's go ahead and step into the web of the Tarantula Preacher. Right out of the gate, it opens not with a promise, but with a declaration of total conquest. This figure isn't here to save you. He calls himself the architect of undoing. And just think about the sheer scale of that claim. He's spun a web across the stars themselves. I mean, it's such a powerful metaphor, right? It's about dismantling everything, old religions, old beliefs, the very heavens people look to for meaning, and replacing it all with his own predatory design. It's a statement of absolute ideological dominance. So who is this character, this tarantula preacher? Well, the text basically presents him as the natural result of a civilization that's already in decay. He's the prophet for a world he calls full of hollowed-out moralities, or even a permanent cemetery of dead convictions. He's not trying to cause the collapse. In his mind, it's already happened. He's just the first one to truly understand how to live and thrive in the ruins. At his core, the preacher defines himself by being beyond the old fights of good versus evil. He claims to have literally fused them, the demonic and the divine, into one single identity. Now, this isn't about finding a nice, neat balance. No, it's about creating a new, internal source of gravity, what he calls an unbreakable anchor of iron. Think about it. In a world where every external moral compass is shattered, the only thing you have left to trust is this forged, sovereign will inside you. It's a total rejection of duality. So his goal isn't to comfort you, it's to force a painful awakening. The sharp venom he talks about is his version of the truth, a completely nihilistic worldview that says all those old values are basically meaningless. He says every word he speaks is a needle, designed to stitch your narrow souls to the vastness of the pit. And this isn't about sending you to hell, it's about forcing you to see the abyss that he believes is the true foundation of reality. And in his eyes, facing that is what makes you strong. And that brings us to the preacher's main argument. He says the cathedral of the sun is falling, that our civilization, its ethics, its virtues are all just a fragile illusion. And in the shadow of that collapse, something much more primal, more authentic about human nature is finally coming out. But here's the twist. In his gospel, this isn't a fall from grace. It's a glorious, even necessary rebirth. Okay, to really get his worldview, we have to understand this one key word, atavism. For the preacher, this isn't some obscure biological concept. It's a spiritual mission. He isn't preaching about some new future. He's advocating for a deliberate, conscious return to an ancient predatory past. He calls it a glorious, multi-limbed rebirth of the true human spirit that's been, suppressed for centuries by polite society. And this comparison just lays it all out perfectly. On one side, you've got the disguised saint, a creature of piety, praying in well-lit rooms, held down by suffocating virtues. The preacher sees all of this as just a mask, a shield hiding a hidden and savage hunger. And on the other side, the predator, an authentic being that embraces the heresy of the flesh and the primal law of the claw. He basically argues that he's just sloughed off the false skin of the saint to reveal the predator that he believes humanity was always meant to be. You see, this isn't a passive philosophy you just read about. It is a direct challenge. The preacher positions himself as your guide to the very edge of morality. The leap he's talking about into your own individual abyss, that's a call for radical self-exploration. It's about confronting the darkness inside yourself, not as some flaw you need to fix, but as a source of magnificence, even terrifying power. So all of this philosophy, it actually builds into a coherent set of principles. The preacher lays out what he calls his eightfold path, and it reads like a direct inversion of something like the Buddhist Eightfold Path. It's a structured system for achieving this new state of being, a real guidebook for how to navigate the void. This path commands his followers to scorn tepid virtues, to reject mediocrity and instead embrace life as an anchored shadow, finding real strength in alienation. It elevates you to become a high priest of the void, a master of meaninglessness. And maybe most disturbingly, it insists on seeing the beautiful necessity of a creative and singular cruelty, not as just mindless violence, but as a sharp, focused instrument of your own will. And beyond just the abstract path, the gospel offers a practical handbook for living this new existence. It's called the Vademecum of the snake. A Vademecum is basically a guide that you're meant to carry with you at all times. And the snake, I mean, what a perfect symbol, right? Hidden wisdom, danger, rebirth, it's all there. Which, of course, begs the question, how do you actually live this way? Once you've accepted that the world is a cemetery of dead convictions, what are the new rules of the road? How do you operate when you genuinely believe that all external laws have totally failed? Well, the guide is basically a manual for radical individualism. It tells you to find your one and only home in your sovereign will. It demands that you embrace and unify complete opposites, the sacred and the profane. It talks about power dynamics, about learning how to harvest the fear of the small, and the ultimate goal, the ultimate ambition, for your very existence to become a living critique of the universe, a constant act of defiance against every established order. Okay, and this is where the whole parable takes a very sharp turn. The tone shifts dramatically. It goes from a philosophical sermon to an immediate declaration. The time for just thinking about this stuff is over. The preacher announces that the time for action is now. This line is like a gavel hitting the wood. That long, slow period of society's decay, the crumbling of institutions and beliefs, that was just the intro. According to the preacher, that chapter is now officially closed and a new one is about to start. So what is this new chapter? The first act of your magnificent destruction. And just notice the language he uses. This isn't framed as a tragedy. It's a glorious, almost theatrical event. The destruction is a creative force, clearing the stage for his new kind of human to rise. And he says it's happening not in a book, but in the streets. So the philosophy is no longer just an idea to think about. In his own words, it is now a physical reality that walks among you. The abstract has become concrete. The sermon has become flesh. This idea is now an active agent in the world, which makes the threat feel incredibly immediate. And the gospel ends on this absolutely chilling command. The harvest he's talking about isn't some gentle metaphor for enlightenment. No, this is the tangible collection of a debt. A tithe is something that is owed. The preacher, this master of the web, believes this transformation is his due, and he's here to collect. Ultimately, this whole strange gospel leaves us with this one profound question. Is this just a celebration of pure nihilism, a doctrine of meaninglessness and total destruction? Or is it a dark parable about a kind of radical individualism, so extreme that it needs to burn down the entire world just to make room for itself? The text doesn't give us any easy answers. The answer, it seems, is left for us to find, somewhere in the shadow of his web.